Well, Aristippus and the Cyrenaic chain of philosophical thought sort of comes to an end with the death of his family, his grandson being the last really effective Cyrenaic. However, pleasure as some component of the good will hang on, as we'll see. Uh, the skeptics, founded by Pyrrho, kind of comes to an end also. Not so much because everybody now is certain about what they know, but rather it's become a component of every other philosophical school. The Cynics, well, the Cynics hang on for a while, and we'll have more to say about them as we go forward. But today we want to turn our attention to one of the most lasting schools of philosophy of antiquity, the Stoics. So we're going to be talking philosophy. Now, the Stoics can trace their story back to being a son of Socrates through two different routes. The first is the philosophical training of Zeno of Citium. Now, do never confuse Zeno of Citium with Zeno of Elea. He is the Zeno of the famous paradoxes, and we'll talk about those someday soon. But Zeno of Citium founded the Stoics after some unsuccessful adventures of his own. First, he read Xenophon's Memorabilia. This was a book by Xenophon, friend of Socrates, who included all the great memories of his life. He'd been a very important person, circulating with lots of people, led a campaign against the Persians. And book 2 of his Memorabilia is almost completely devoted to Socrates. So, Zeno has read this book and is fascinated. He wants to know all there is to know about Socrates. So he gets himself into Athens, gets himself over to the local bookstall, and says, I want Socrates' book. Now, as you know, and I know, Socrates wrote no book. The bookseller knew Socrates wrote no book. But the bookseller did know what Socrates did do. And so as Crates, student of Diogenes, he who lived in the tub and contradicted Alexander the Great, who was the student of Antisthenes, the founder of the Cynic movement, who had been the student of Socrates, walked by, the bookseller pointed at him and said, there walks the book of Socrates. And so Zeno turned and became Crates' student. So as you see, two heritages for the Stoics from Socrates. First, through Xenophon. Second, through the teachings of the Cynics. Now, at this point, I want to acknowledge the book Diogenes, Life of the Eminent Philosophers. Everything I really know about this stuff comes from there. Oh, sure, I've read a lot of other things besides, but it's Diogenes Laertius. It's our primary source for all this information. Diogenes is pretty good. He's not above telling you when he's not sure something is true. He's not above telling you when the same story or same statement is attributed to two different philosophers. And as such, he's trying to make himself as trustworthy, as honest as he can be. And when it comes right down to it, honesty is all we can hope for. We can never be sure of the truth, but we can be sure when somebody's lying to us or not. So he's trying to be honest. He's trying to tell us the truth as he knows it. Now, according to Diogenes, Crates says of Zeno that he leaves the Cynic school because he can't deal with the Cynic lifestyle, that he's too soft. As you'll remember, the Cynic lifestyle, which you also may remember if you saw my video on the Cynics, I said I wasn't sure it can be followed universally. The Cynic lifestyle was too harsh, too biting. I mean, the notion that the Cynics take away from Socrates is that the philosopher is a gadfly who must therefore sting and motivate society. And Crates suggested that Zeno just didn't have the stomach. He didn't have the guts to stand up and say the things and do the things that a real cynic had to do. I hate psychologizing, even in the ancients. It's always possible that Zeno thought he enjoyed the poking around too much, that it was altogether too much fun to sting people, and that wasn't really getting the job done. I don't know. I can't psychologize either. But all I do know is he does leave the Cynics, and he does propose a more moderate lifestyle, one that, as I say, survives to this day. The Stoic. The name Stoic, Stoicism, comes from the practice of the group of philosophers gathering to hear Zeno talk and to talk amongst themselves at the Stoa of one of the temples in Athens. It's identified as several different temples, so I'm not going to worry with any of them. But the idea is they all got together at the same place. It was a porch, a Stoa, and so they were called the guys who hung out at the Stoa, and so they were the Stoics. And what did they decide? Well, like the Cynics, they thought that nature was the answer. The closer to nature, the better. But what interested them was not using that natural standpoint as a way to attack the unnatural behavior of others, but rather to investigate that nature, discover the truth behind that nature, and then use that to guide their own lives and use their lives as examples to others. The key word here is logos. Logos. The idea of a logos, of a guiding force, of a central principle that makes everything in the universe fit together, at least goes back to Heraclitus, about 100 years prior to the work of Zeno. But this theme of logos, of order, well, the word logos, if we look at the translations usually put out there, means word. If you're familiar at all with the first opening lines of the Gospel of John, you'll remember he says that the Word is with God, was God, amongst God. The important part is the word translated there as word is logos. So logos is the word. Logos is the root of logic. It is that L-O-G-Y ending that comes at the end of geology and anthropology and all of those ologies. I'm going to suggest, now mind you, I have no credentials as an ancient linguist, but I don't think this is out of order with the idea of word. I think it amplifies what we're trying to get at. Word, logos, perhaps here is best understood as meaning. Just as we're trying to get to the meaning of the earth when we're studying geology, that we're trying to get to the meaning of thinking when we're studying logic, that the meaning is with God in the Gospel of John. The meaning of things is what the Stoics are trying to discover. What does it all mean? And they approach it three different ways. They approach it through logic, primarily syllogistic logic. It's suggested that the first truth tables may have been worked out by the Stoics. I don't know enough about that to say one way or the other. But I can say that logic was one of their primary concerns. They divided the study of philosophy into three parts: logic, ethics, and physics. So logic, studying syllogism, how reasoning works. Or at least how reasoning should work, because maybe we aren't all reasonable creatures, or we aren't reasonable all of the time. So how reasoning should work. Ethics is how we should behave, how behavior should work. How do things in fact work in accord with the logos? How can we match the logos? Because that's the whole point. Get back to nature, get back to fundamentals, get back to that core principle that guides the universe, the logos. And then you have physics. Physics is simply the study of how everything that's not human thought follows the logos. It's not so much a should as it in fact is a does. And again, ethics should be a does. We should all follow those principles. It should be how we behave, not merely that we should behave that way. Anyway, this kind of three-part division, if you will, in the mind, body, and spirit, that is to say logic for the mind, physics for the body, and ethics for the spirit, the passion, the active force in the world embodied by human beings. It's found in Plato, it's found in Aristotle, it's found in a lot of thinkers, going right back to Thales, the first philosopher. So when this is proposed by Zeno, it's not alien and people see how it works. Zeno limited his division of philosophy into just those three parts. Some of his followers broke those three parts into other parts, but Zeno, that's all there was to it. Logic, how thinking works, ethics, how behavior works, physics, how the world works, all in accord with the logos, the guiding principle of everything. Now, I'm not going to waste a lot of time on logic because, frankly, that deserves a lot of graphics and probably deserves to be developed beyond where the Stoics take it. So we'll save that for another occasion. Not going to waste a lot of time on the physics because, frankly, as we move forward into the present, we find that a lot of what the Stoics thought was wrong. So why waste our time? But where ethics is concerned, well, that's where we most understand the Stoics. That's what we think of as the Stoics. And when we use the term Stoic, I think this is fair to say, when people use the word Stoic, they mean someone who is essentially dispassionate, who deals with the vicissitudes of life in a completely nonchalant way, with complete coolness. They don't become angry. They deal with setbacks the same way they deal with advances. All essentially dispassionately, like the Vulcans. There's no question that Roddenberry et al. Based a lot of the Vulcan philosophy around Stoicism. So that's what we think of as a Stoic today, someone who doesn't feel any passion. Well, that's probably a little too strong, but that certainly was the goal of the Stoic. The Stoic wanted to be dispassionate, apatheia, not caring. Literally, as we use the term today, apathy, we mean we don't care. But we tend to mean that as a bad thing. The Greeks, as we've seen before and will see again, see it as a good thing, that if we are filled with passion, we will make mistakes. We will wander away from the logos. Our logos is to be rational. We are the sole creatures, they say, who can reason, who can think this way. Therefore, the closer we are to this one unique trait of ours, the closer we are to the logos and to the true meaning of life. Now, as always, we're sticking to the sons of Socrates. We're not going to go carrying forward generation after generation here. But it's worth mentioning that two of the most famous Stoics are a slave and the emperor of Rome. Epictetus wrote his book, the Enchiridion, the manual, the instructions on how to be a Stoic, as a slave, and taught as a freed slave the rules of Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, most powerful human being certainly in Europe and Africa and parts of Asia. He was a Stoic. He led basically the same life as Epictetus, the only differences being the duties that weighed on him. But he treated those duties just exactly as Epictetus treated his duties, with dispassion, with an absence of personal interest, pursuing only what the Logos told him was right to do. And as I say that, Logos told him, it's not like I'm making some kind of mystical claim that you sat and listened to the Logos and it talked to you. No, rather that as he pursued the logic that explained how the universe should work, how it does in fact work when we do it right, he would be able to make the right decisions and lead his people the right way. And Marcus Aurelius is considered one of the great emperors of Rome. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them now. We'll probably come back and do them as a pair a little later on. However, I'd like to mention one last insight into Stoicism presented by a modern writer on Stoicism. Admiral William Stockdale, who was Ross Perot's running mate, who was a graduate of Annapolis, was a Navy pilot during the Vietnam War, who was shot down and spent much time in a POW camp. He was in the typical cage. He was beaten. He had his injuries untreated. And he claimed in an article that he wrote later, an article called The World of Epictetus, he claimed that Stoic philosophy he was taught just as part of a course on philosophy at Annapolis helped him get through this disastrous situation of being captured by the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese. I don't remember which was your. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, the point is the torture, the extremely limited lifestyle, the pain, all of this, he found a way through by remembering the teachings of Epictetus, that these things are not in your control. Therefore, control what you can control. And what he could control was his reaction to these things. And when he couldn't control his reaction, he did not beat himself up. He realized that this was the same natural reaction that he had to have in order to continue going toward the Logos, the way it guided. So that got him through. Well, he tells the story. He says, look, you're always just minutes away, moments away from the world of Epictetus. He points out that up until he was shot down, his war was largely have a meeting in the morning, have a little lunch, go bomb Hanoi, fly home, get home early enough, you shoot a little golf, have cocktails, dinner, time with the wife, and then the next day get up and do it all over again. That was his life. He said, but I was always just moments from the world of Epictetus. Well, Epictetus would have told him he was already in the world of Epictetus, just as Marcus Aurelius was already in the world of Epictetus. The luxuries of life, the better things of life, the good things of life, the Stoic doesn't shun these. He simply says, this is not me. I am that which reacts to these things, and I will not react to them with pride or ownership because I do not own them and I have done nothing to be proud by accepting them. They're just a fact of my life, of where I am, what my station is. Epictetus has a bowl. Marcus Aurelius has an empire. William Stockdale has dinner at the club. But all of these things are not them. These are things that act on them. They are the reaction to those things. And so Epictetus would say, you were always in my world. You just understood it when you were in a little box being tortured and in pain. And that's what they would all tell us today, that the world of Epictetus is the world we live in all the time. And so we must know for sure that these are not our things. This is not our life. We are the narrow little things that we can control, the narrow little things we have some kind of power over. And that's all. Everything else can be taken from us at any moment. Well, I hope you enjoyed this insight into the Stoics. After we've talked about the next major school, the Epicureans, I'll probably do a program contrasting the two and complementing the two, showing how they form a meaningful approach into the future. In the meantime, if you're seeing this on Facebook, give it a like. Please, if you're seeing this on Facebook or Patreon, either one, go over to YouTube and subscribe there. If I can get 100 subscribers, I get to make up my own URL, so I can make it be youtube.com/talkingphilosophy, but only once I have had 100 subscribers. In line with that, always, 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 please share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it. Recommend it to anybody who might like it. If you are interested in supporting this, contributing a little money to help improve the graphics or the lighting, if you'd like to be listed as a producer or executive producer or associate producer of the program, go over to patreon.com/talkingphilosophy, and you'll see what you need to do to contribute a little money. I hope you'll be back. I hope you will share. I hope you will comment. But most of all, I hope you keep on talking philosophy.